Welcome back to the Ave Maria Press Professional Development Webinar Series. In today's webinar, Woodeene Koenig-Bricker will share some simple and accessible ways to intentionally integrate your parish's saint into the lived experience of your parishioners. My name is Erin Pierce. I am the publicist at Ave Maria Press. Everyone in the audience is muted today, but you are able to ask questions. Questions can be sent to our presenter using the questions panel here on the GoToWebinar platform, and I'll read as many of those questions as possible at the end of the presentation today. The webinar is being recorded, and I will send you a link to the recording via email tomorrow, and you are welcome and encouraged to share that with whoever you would like. With that, I would like to welcome and introduce our presenter today. Woodeene Koenig-Bricker is a Catholic author, a journalist, and the founding editor of Catholic Parent magazine. She earned master's degrees in both journalism and Egyptology. She has written many books and articles on the saints, spirituality, and parenting, including 365 Saints, Your Daily Guide to the Wisdom and Wonder of Their Lives. Woodeene, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and make you presenter.
Okay, show my screen. There we are. All right. I'm so glad to be here with you, and I'm such an opportunity to share something that's very near and dear to my heart, and that is building community. Oops, now I just see me. What happened to my screen?
Maybe go down at the bottom, click on the bottom bar. We can see you and your screen.
But I can't see my own screen. There. Now, can you see my screen?
Yeah, we could see your screen the whole time, but it's important
Okay,
that
now,
you see it too. Okay.
Now
So wonderful. Okay, take it from here.
Okay. It's very important for me because I have a great affection for the saints, because I believe very strongly that they are our tangible and concrete connection to the universal church. So, saints alive. First of all, who is your saint? Every parish has a saint. Who is your saint? What is the saint that belongs with your parish? What is the saint for whom your parish is named? And more importantly, how much do you know about your saint, and how much do your parishioners know about your saint? So we're going to talk about some ideas for parish involvement, and then we'll just have a little bit of an overview of some things. So please feel free to ask questions. I may not always know the answer, but I may know where to find the answer, and I will do my best. So let's get started. Your parish, your saint. There is a regulation that says there cannot be two churches in an immediate area that have the same saint, which makes sense because you don't want to have two St. Vincents in the same city, because that would be not only very confusing, but it would also be probably a little bit divisive. Although it amuses me because the longest standing, for me personally, the longest standing church in my area is St. Mary's. It is, I'm not sure when it was established, but at least well over 100 years ago. There's also a St. Mary's Episcopal Church. Now, I've never understood why Episcopalians would name a church after St. Mary. That was always a bit of a puzzlement to me. It's always a little bit of a puzzlement to me as to why the Catholics would call it St. Mary's and not, Mary, Our Lady of something or other. But these two St. Mary's are located very close to one another, and they do occasionally get confused. People sometimes show up St. Mary's Catholic thinking they're going to St. Mary's Episcopal, and sometimes they come to St. Mary's Episcopal and they really want to be at St. Mary's Catholic. And what to add to the confusion is that St. Mary's Episcopal is a high Episcopal church. So when you go into it, it looks like a Catholic church. So it's all very confusing. So anyway, but Catholic regulations do not allow you to have two churches with the same name. So it's your parish and it is your saint. It's very much going to be your saint. And so the idea is to make this personal, make this very personal for you, yourself, for your own spiritual development, but also for your parishioners. So let's get started. Why your saint name matters. Now, first of all, as we all know, parish names can become merely institutional, not personal. Now you can say, St. Jude just becomes St. Jude. It doesn't, no one thinks about the St. Jude, it just thinks about the parish. Another example of how this can happen is that the largest hospital in my area, everyone refers to it as Riverbend. It's just called Riverbend. It is built on the bend of a river, which sort of makes sense. Its full name, if they think of a full name, is Peace Health at Riverbend, which is fine. That is also what it is. People sometimes refer to it as Peace Health because there's an extensive Peace Health network, but its real name is Sacred Heart Hospital Peace Health at Riverbend because it is a Catholic hospital. So it lost the Sacred Heart part as it became this sort of an institute, an institutional aspect. So people don't really talk about it as being Sacred Heart. They talk about it as being Riverbend. And unfortunately, similar things can happen with parish names because you begin to be identified with your parish, and the parish becomes sort of the building, and if you have a school and all of those kind of things that aren't really associated with the saint, but associated with that overall arcing institute that your parish represents. But your saint is a part of what makes your parish unique, because your parish is under the patronage of that saint. We need to talk just a tiny bit about patronage here. It goes back to Renaissance times, maybe even a little earlier, when a wealthy person would sponsor, often an artist, would sometimes sponsor a church or whatever it is, but they would be the ones who would sponsor it. They became the patron, kind of like we have patron of the arts now, that people give donations like to PBS or something, and they're referred to as a patron of the art. So we had patronages. Well, when your saint was selected for your parish, it was intentionally placed under the patronage of that saint. That saint is your patron saint. It's the saint who should be guiding and guarding and creating a whole charism around your parish, because that saint is part of what makes your parish unique. Not just the location, not just the ethnic diversity, not just whatever else you might think about makes your parish, whether you're located on this side of the street or that side of the street, but it's also your patron. Your patron really lies at the heart of who your parish should be. In addition, your saint name allows us to be united with the whole church. We recognize, we talk about the communion of the saints. Well, your saint name in your parish shows that we are united with the entire church. There is a unity in the entire church. We are all part of the body of the saints that are, my nose is itching. My cat passed through a few minutes ago and waved his tail in my face, and now I want to sneeze from cat hair. So forgive me if I sneeze from cat hair. The communion of saints, or the saints who are with us now, the church militant, the church in heaven, all of this, we're all part of an entity. And this, your patron saint, your parish patron saint, unites you with the whole church. And that's a really important thing to think about. It is an important thing for your parishioners to get in their mind, that they aren't just their parish, but their patron saint brings them into the whole. And we need heroes and heroines of the faith. We need people who have stood up for the faith, who have lived their lives in such a way that they can be exemplary for us. We hear about modern contemporary saints, and some of them that are recently canonized, or maybe some like John Paul II or Mother Teresa that have had a lot of publicity. But remember, we have a more than 2,000-year-old history of these heroes and heroines of the faith, and it's likely that your parish is named after one of the less contemporary saints, but that doesn't make their witness any less contemporary. And as you learn about who your saint is, there's a great deal of relevance. Even if they lived in a different time and place, they were still part of this universal church. And lastly, your saint provides a ready-made focus for parish identity. Rather than trying to say, we're the whatever parish on the south side of town, or we're the parish with the Catholic school, or whatever, your saint provides this with just a absolute ready-made focus for you to identify who your parish is, not just to the outside world, but also to your parishioners. The important thing to remember is the name of your parish was chosen for a reason. I don't think that many of us consider why or how parishes get names. I know I certainly didn't. I grew up at St. Anthony's and never gave it a thought as to why it was called St. Anthony's. It just was. That was just the name of it. You know, and I was trying to think how many parishes I've been part of over the years, you know, and it's probably, whether I've attended it or worked or whatever, it's probably 30 or 40. And I never really gave it much thought as to why was it named what it was named. But the name of your parish was chosen, and there was a reason for it. It wasn't like there's some great bin of saint names available up at the diocese, and you know, somebody, you know, like bingo cards, and reaches in and pulls out and says, "Yaha, you're going to be, you know, Saint whoever." No, it's a process by which it's chosen. The selection process has multiple layers to it. It must follow Canon Law 1214 to 1222, which you can look up if you're so interested. It's legalese, but basically what this says is that it often ties into local history. Historically, maybe an area was devoted to a saint, or maybe there was maybe the saint lived in your area, like some of them, like earlier saints. You know, I know that there are areas in the country where parishes are named after someone who was there. Mother Cabrini, for instance, I believe has a couple of parishes in Colorado. Very often, it has ethnic ties, like St. Patrick for an Irish parish. St. Patrick's Cathedral was built with donations from many, many Irish immigrants. So there may be that kind of an ethnic association with it. As I said before, that you cannot have the same name in a localized area, and they really frown on you having duplicates in the entire diocese. There may be a few occasions where churches were established early on, and there are some duplicates, but it's really frowned on. So, I mean, if there's another saint, whatever it is, and a new parish is being founded, it's very, very, very unlikely that that parish is going to be allowed to have that duplicate name. The name may be made by parish vote. Excuse me, I'm going to turn away just for a second because I'm going to sneeze. Thank you, or try not to sneeze. It may be made by parish vote. That is, that the parish may offer it to the founding people and say, you know, what do you think about these names? And, you know, the one that emerges comes at the top. It may be selected by the original pastor, who might have had a particular devotion to a certain saint. I tell a story. A friend of mine is a priest in a parish that I won't name because that might embarrass him. It's a very odd saint's name, let's just put it that way. And the saint that it's named after falls into the sort of apocryphal saint list. We don't know much about this saint, and so it's not like we have a good history of it. But the reason it was named after this saint is when the parish was being built, a wealthy donor came forward and offered a great deal of money to help build the church and build the parish hall, and at the time build the school, if they named it after this saint. And I think that the saint's name was the name of this person's either mother or grandmother. So the donation was contingent upon having the parish be given that name. Fortunately, there was a saint with that name, although it's a very obscure, unknown, and not terribly reliable saint, but that's how this particular parish got its name. The name must be approved by the bishop. And as I said, it must follow canon law, which has some other qualifications for why it has to be there. And the name cannot be changed after the dedication of the church. And I say usually. There have been some times and some instances when parish names have changed, but there has to be some kind of a really good reason for it to be changed. And it has to, again, go by, the bishop has to approve it, and there's a whole process by which it's changed. But the likelihood of a parish name being changed after it's dedicated is very, very slim. So why this saint? Why this particular saint? The first step in using the saint to build community is you need to find out why the name was chosen, which is not always as easy as you might think it is. And the first step is to ask the pastor, but the pastor may not know, especially if he's new or if there have been a lot of pastoral changes or if he's a missionary pastor. The church that I attend has an associate pastor who is from India, and I'm pretty sure he has absolutely no idea how this particular parish got its name. But there's a chance that the pastor would know, so that would be the first place. You can also check old records. Go back as far as you can with whatever kind of records are available in the parish, going back as far as you can to see if there's any kind of a notification or anything about how the name of the saint was chosen. There may be. You can contact the diocese. They're going to have all of the records of how it was established and everything. There probably will be something in there that indicates maybe why the name was chosen, or at least somewhat of the process. If your parish is well established and an older parish, go look at old newspapers. In those days, they published everything, from, Miss Matilda had, Miss Susie Jones over, and they had tea and crumpets on the deck, because they published absolutely everything of any interest. And those old newspapers would very likely have something about the establishment of the church in the area and probably something about how the name was chosen. So that's another possibility. And lastly, you can ask some longtime parishioners, although in my experience, most parishioners don't have a clue. Even the ones who've been there forever, they don't have a clue why the church was named that. So you may or may not be able to find out exactly why the church's name was chosen, but here's some places to start, and here's some ideas that you can kind of use to say, why would you choose this particular saint? So what names can be used? Well, a canonized saint, obviously. So anyone that's in the established canon of canonized saints can be used. A blessed can be used with permission. This sometimes happens, I believe, and I might be correct, I believe there was a parish established in Oklahoma because there was a Blessed Stanley someone or other who was martyred, and a new parish was established, and they asked to use his name when he was still a blessed. So you might get a few parishes here and there that will have a blessed instead of a saint. A title of Christ can be used. So we have, Christ the King and a lot of other Christocentric parish names. A title of Mary, Our Lady of the Lake, Our Lady of the Sea, Our Lady of, the Gardens, Mary Queen of Angels, whatever. Saint Mary is kind of an outlier, but there are Saint Marys. It can be named after a holy angel. You might have, Gabriel or Raphael, or you might have a parish, or maybe even have a parish named Holy Angel. Can be named after the Trinity. Have Holy Spirit. You could have, or the Trinity. And then there are a couple of places that are traditional outliers, like Blessed Sacrament, which I suppose technically could be considered a title of Christ, but it isn't really. So we do have some outliers, but they generally refer back to something in the church or something about the church or something, sacred to the church. So there's a variety of kinds of names that can be used. But generally, most often, we're going with a canonized saint. So let's begin. How do we go about doing this? Well, if your parish is named after a saint, it's important to begin to investigate their life. Now, if it's named after Blessed Sacrament or something else, we'll briefly touch on how to do that later. But right now, we're just going to focus on saints and saint names. And I have a picture here that you can see of a whole variety of different people and different saints. So we have lots and lots of saints that we can consider and find out something about your saint. So as an example, in this, we have an invented saint, Saint Jefina Barista. And for all of you who might feel that it's necessary to be very serious in these presentations, I apologize because I'm not always that serious a person. So we are going to use Kafina Barista as our example. And partially because I just thought it would be kind of fun, but also because I really didn't want to give someone an unnecessary fair advantage if I used an actual parish and outlined all of these things. That just didn't seem fair to me to hand somebody something entire. So we're just going to pretend that St. Kafina Barista is a saint. So we need to have something, a bit of their bio. We need to figure out something about them. You need to learn a little bit about them. And you may know something in here. We have a cattail. Okay, sir, you have to go. Well, the best way is to read a biography. You know, there are lots of biographies of the saints out there. So find a dedicated biography and read it. You can go to Vatican.va, which has lots and lots of resources, as I'm sure you already know, but they have extensive resources on saints, and particularly on modern saints, or what one would consider modern in the last 40 to 50 years. They will have a lot of biographical material, and they also have a lot of reference material, lots of places that you can go to. You can check out Wikipedia. There's things you have to take with a grain of salt in Wikipedia, because not every more cattail, not everything in Wikipedia is exactly true, but Wikipedia does have, at the end of every article, a good list of resources. And so you can go to those resources and check them out, or you can use a saint's book, like my own 365 Saints, which is just what it says, 365 Saints, one for a saint of a day with a short biography and a short prayer and a short background, or something like Butler's Lives of the Saints. There's the traditional Butler's Lives of the Saints, which is very old and actually very wonderful to read and has lots of apocryphal things in it. But there is a new, concise, modernized edition that is edited by Bernard Bangley, which does have updated Lives of the Saints, and it's a really good place to go for if you want to learn something about your saint and about who they were. So let's look at Saint Kafina. Saint Kafina, according to all the records that I was able to obtain, lived in Colombia. She was raised on a coffee plantation. She drank at least 10 cups of coffee today and every day. And she was known for her incredible energy and stamina, which was attributed to her love of God. And it had absolutely nothing to do with the fact that she drank 10 cups of coffee every day. Absolutely nothing. It was all for the love of God. So once you've learned out something about your saint, about who they were, something of the background, we ask that you look at, or the best thing to do would be to look at the saintly charisms. You know, what is significant about this saint? What did they do that made them, well, made them saintly? Was it an emphasis on the poor? Did they have a particular mission toward the poor? Was there a particular interest in social justice, for instance? Was it theology? Did they, you know, are they a doctor of the church? Was it because they contributed to worship, you know, hymn writing or whatever? There's some saints that were well known for their hymns, where they wrote prayers that are used. Were they very involved in mission work? Now, what was it about the saint that makes them significant? Now, I'd encourage you, when you're looking at this, in order to dig more deeply into the saint, in order to use this as a rallying point for your parish, that you not just go into the superficial. For instance, St. Martin de Porres has always been known for his emphasis on social justice, his emphasis on, you know, marginalized communities, because he himself was of mixed race, but he was also had a tremendous outreach to cats and dogs. He felt that they were very much a part of God's creation, and so he would rescue stray cats and dogs and treat them with whatever medicine they had, whatever they needed, and then he would take them to his sister's house in the country, who became essentially the first whatever, I don't know, cat and dog rescue, or whatever you would call it today. I guess SPCA or something. Anyway, he he would take them there, and she would then take care of them and see if she could find homes for them. And this is another cat. This is the second cat who thinks that he is the boss of all. So, well, I think his sister should have been named a saint, because you can imagine your brother showing up with, 5 more stray dogs with mange and saying, "Hi, found them on the street. Here we are." So she probably should be the one that have been canonized as well. But maybe that kind of aspect of your saint that's not so well known can really become a focal point of education and for teaching and for a greater outreach for your parishioners. Now, Saint Koenig-Bricker, our all-time favorite saint, she supported coffee as an alternative to tea. This was just a real passion of hers. She felt that coffee should be drunk over tea. She advocated for fair trade coffee throughout the world. She gave out free coffee to all who looked for it, and she created a coffee mug factory to really keep people employed. I mean, the great charism of her coffee. So choose your saint's charism. What aspect of your saint's life or charism is the most appropriate for your parish? As I said, maybe St. Martin de Porres, has outreach to the poor, but maybe for whatever reason, your parish might really get behind animal rescue, or might really get behind some kind of a project that helps care for protecting the wolves. I'm just throwing something out. I really have no idea, because I don't really know, but it might be something, that lesser known aspect of their charism might be something that could really energize your parish. So, consult with other parishioners, say, what is it about the saint that, you really like? What is it that you can identify with? What is it that's something that you really think that we could use to form community around? Look at other successful programs in the past. What really engaged your parish? What really excited them? What made them have a huge turnout? Why did they come? And see how that might link into the charism of your saint. And become enthused. I mean, you get to choose this charism. You're the one who's going to help establish this program. And so don't pick one of the saint's charisms that you're just sort of lukewarm about, or you think, oh yeah, find something that really excites you, because your excitement will translate into excitement for your parish. So, Saint Koenig-Bricker, the charisms for her parish are good coffee for all. Really good coffee. She wants everyone to have good coffee. She thinks people should have decent mugs to drink their coffee out of. She believes in community bonding over coffee. She believes in coffee farming education. And so these are things that your parish might want to become involved in if you have a particular dedication to Saint Koenig. But what happens? But our parish is Blessed Sacrament of the Trinity. What do we do then? How do we find a charism for Blessed Sacrament? And what do we do for that? Well, your parish really does have a saint, no matter what your parish name. Your parish really is under the patronage of a saint. Even if you or none of your parishioners know it, it's in the altar. Canon 1237 requires that a first-class relic be in every Catholic altar. A first-class relic, it means something that is of the saint, not something that was touched to the saint, or not something that was by the saint, but it really is part of what the saint was. This relic connects the Eucharistic celebration to the witness of the martyrs and to our unity in Christ's sacrifice, because early altars were built over the tombs of the saints, and the early saints were all martyrs. So there must be a relic in the altar of your parish. There are special requirements about how it is to be placed and what it's to be done. Here are some of them. The bishop must verify its authenticity. It has to be an authenticated saint. It can't be, I'm at a loss here, but it can't be something that people just say, oh, here's a relic of so-and-so. No, it has to be verified and authenticated. It has to be placed in a sealed reliquary with a document of authenticity signed by the bishop. It's deposited under the main altar stone during the rite of consecration of the church. It's sealed and it's marked with a cross. So your altar probably, not always, but it should have at least a small cross, not a crucifix, but just a small cross embedded somewhere in the altar stone that will indicate where the reliquary is. That relic must remain there until the altar is deconsecrated and the reliquary is removed and the relic of the saint is responsibly brought back to the diocese. So you do have a saint in there. And, well, who is your saint relic? Well, the pastor may or should know. As I said, I'm not always 100% certain that they all do, but they should. And it may be labeled at the altar. There may be a label on it, probably in Latin, or there may be a label at the altar along with the cross that will tell you what saint's relic is there. It's definitely part of the church records. It's definitely part of the dedication of the church. It will definitely be located in the church records for the dedication of the church. And you can always verify with the diocese because the diocese has to have keeping records of all of this. Now, why is the relic different from the parish name? Why, if you're Saint Jude, why don't you have the same name? Well, first, is there no verified records of the earliest saints? I mean, there are no records of relics, verified relics of Jesus, Mary, Joseph, the angels, the Trinity, none of, John the Baptist or any of there are no verified relics because there just aren't. So that is one reason that the two don't correspond. In fact, it's probably less likely that the relic in the altar is the same as the name of the church than to have it otherwise. They're probably two different saints, probably. And it's entirely possible that someone had a particular devotion to a saint who wasn't the name of the parish. Maybe the first pastor, maybe he had a particular devotion to, you pick a saint, but the parish name is Blessed Sacrament. So he may have asked, requested, or investigated into getting a relic of the saint for his own particular devotion, or someone may have given the parish a verified relic of the saint. There's lots of reasons why the relic may be different from the parish name. And you may say to me, but we don't want to use the relic name, and and that's okay. Even if you don't have a saint name for your parish, still go ahead and investigate the reason for the actual name is and how was it chosen. Why was your parish called Blessed Sacrament? What was the reason behind it? And take some time to examine the meaning of the name. What does Blessed Sacrament really mean? And we're not going to go into this at this point. And I'm going to sneeze because of those cats keep coming through here. You'd think I would know better than to let the cats in with me, but I don't. If your church is named after Mary or Joseph or the Holy Trinity, consider can't speak. Consider a specific aspect of that name. Maybe Our Lady of the Lake or Mary Queen of Angels or something, so that you can have something more specific that you can focus around. The idea is to focus on some aspect of the parish name that you can adapt, pure and simply. But this is about using a saint's name. So if you have a non-saint named parish, adapt as you can. And I will give you some contact information at the end of this that if I can help you, you're free to contact me, and I may be able to give you some ideas about what you can do. So next step, you've got, who your saint is. You've got him or her established. And so set a parish goal. How are you going to use your saint? How are you going to use your saint to contribute to community in your parish? Well, first of all, we need to engage the parish. And the first thing to do is to remind parishioners that their parish is under the patronage of a particular saint. People, as I said earlier, will tend to get institutionalized about it and kind of forget that there is actually a person behind the name. First level of basic information is to provide biographical information about the saint in the bulletin or online. Tell your parishioners who the saint is. Give them some information about the saint. And then moving up into the levels of more complexity is to create activities or actions that highlight the saint and highlight the saint's activities. So what can we do? Here's the easy edition. Remind your parishes of their named saint's feast day. This is just the most basic of all. You know, every saint is going to have a feast day. It will most usually be the day of their death, because that's the day that they entered into heaven. But it can vary a little bit, especially if someone has the misfortune of falling on a very popular saint's name, or falling on Christmas, for instance, then another day is chosen. So just remind parishioners that today, you know, or whatever this week, it's your named saint's feast day. You can get holy cards with the saint, and you put them in the back of the church, often with a prayer from the saint or a prayer about the saint or whatever, just very quietly. You know, you could either print them up yourself, you could get them at you know, I want to say FedEx, but that's not it. But no, one of the print shops, you know, really, really relatively inexpensively, print them up at the back. You can put a short bio of the saint in the bulletin. Just maybe include a few lines in each week, maybe every 6 months or so, put a slightly expanded bio, something just to remind people of who the saint is. Something a little more engaging is you can show a movie about the saint to your youth group or to your parish. There are a lot of good saint movies out there, and a lot of people, you know, people like to go to movies. So you could show a movie about the saint. You could, especially during Lent or during Advent, if your saint falls into those time periods, you know, showing a movie is a good way, and it's a pretty low-key way of introducing your saint. Moving up to a slightly more complex, you can plan some kind of a parish social honor around the saint's feast day. You can have, you know, I don't know, maybe if it's your saints in the summer, you might choose time period near the saint's day for a parish picnic or a parish activity, or, you know, some kind of a parish activity near or around the saint's feast day. You can include a talk about the saint during presentations to catechists and invite parishioners to attend. Somewhere in the course of learning about the church and joining the church, you know, find an opening where you could have these people who, remember, are joining a specific church. They are joining the universal church, but they're also joining your parish. Have parishioners attend this talk. You can start an outreach activity based on the saint's charism. We'll get into that a little. And then again, you can show a movie about the saint. The reason I included this again is that then you might want to show it to adults. You might have it not just to youth, and you might include a book about the saint. You might even include offering readings about the saint. You might expand that into more than just a movie, but maybe a discussion about the saint. And then we can move up to a big deal. You can create an Advent or Lenten series based on the saint and the saint's charism. You know, Saint Caffeina Barista was really very fond of having coffee during all the major seasons of the year. Have a day of reflection featuring the saint. Use whatever charism you found and center the day of reflection around that saint's charism. You could start an outreach activity based on the saint's charism. You know, for instance, in the St. Martin de Tours, you might start a collection where you have people bring used blankets and used bedding that you take to, you know, your local humane society. Some kind of an outreach that directly relates into the saint's charism. If you really want to go whole piggy, as they say, you could dedicate an entire year to the saint's patronage. Prepare by saying, you know, this is our saint, we're placing our parish under his or her patronage, and really bring the saint, their charism and their meaning into your parish for an entire year. And if you have something much more tangible, you could commission a statue or a painting of your saint to be placed somewhere in the church. I think that's, if you have the funds and the availability, I think that's a really wonderful way to bring your saint into a permanent place in the church, and allows you to center a lot of other activities around the dedication of that statue or that painting, and just really bring people into it. It's a really lovely, tangible way. But again, that depends on your parish's finances. It depends on a lot of other factors that are involved in it. So if you were living at, where are we here? If you were living at St. Koenig-Brickers Parish, you could buy holy cards for the back of the church. You could put a bio of her in the bulletin. You could purchase paper cups with her name on them for parish events. And you could watch the movie Brood for God, which I'm told is just a spectacular movie with lots of really deep, insightful meanings about what it means to be a coffee lover. At the next level, you could prepare a parish celebration around her feast day, which is February 29th. So, if you're fortunate enough to have her as your parish saint, it's not going to be every year. You luck out on that. But, and these are more, actually, this one is more real. You could sponsor a Colombian farmer family to provide them with some of the things that they might need, or just have an exchange between your parish and a farmer family. You could use her charisms for a parish retreat, and how to serve coffee. The best way to serve coffee, whether you put it in a pot or a French press. And again, I'm just teasing. You could invite a speaker who's written about her to give a talk. Not me, but you could invite, and this would be true of any saint, you could invite a speaker who's written about that particular saint to give a talk to your parish, to talk to your parish about the saint, to talk to your parish about who that saint is. That would engage a lot of people and probably make somebody who's written about the saint very happy to come. If you want to have a really big deal, and these are silly, but somewhat silly, but they also have some basis in reality, you could, focus on some aspect of her life. In her case, you could do it by trying new coffee blends after Mass. You could suggest that the entire parish, give up coffee during Lent in her honor, which would mean that you would have an entire parish of very, very cranky people by Easter. You could erect a coffee tree to donate bags of coffee to other parishes. You could fundraise by making coffee mugs with her name. You could erect a dedicated coffee area in the parish hall to her statue. Now again, I'm being silly, I'm being facetious, and obviously there is no St. Koenig-Bricker, and I'm just playing with this. But some of these ideas are certainly adaptable with changes to what you might be able to do in your own parish with your own saint. And of course, as I said, I'm just kidding with St. Koenig, but I'm not kidding about your saint's sake. Your saint's sake is important. It's your parish, it's your saint. Use your saint's help. Your saint is there to help you. The saint is part of the universality of the church. They're really there to help you, and use them. So here's some of my final tips. First of all, involve the pastor first. Obviously, that has to be. You've got to get him on board in order to create any kind of programs around your saint. Involve key parishioners. That's also very essential. If you don't have the key parishioners on board, you're not going to get anywhere. Explain why this can help your parish. Explain it to the pastor, explain it to the key parishioners, and explain it to the parish. Start slow. Start with something slow and build it if it's well received. And most important, use it as part of your own faith journey. Use it as something that you can use in order to grow in your own faith by being more aware and incorporating a greater devotion to your parish saint into your own life. Use your saint to both your personal and parish benefit. It can strengthen your own familiarity with the saint. It can help focus parish celebrations. It can create new and engaging outreaches, and it can anchor faith in a real person. But most importantly, I think, is that this gives us something new. We love the familiar, we love the tradition, we love all of those things, but new things re-engage us. And this is a good way to do something new and something old at the same time. It can really help engage people in a way maybe that they haven't been engaged in before. And it's just a lovely way to introduce an important person to the faith. So here's the prayer of St. Koenig-Bricker, which is fictional, of course. Dear God, spare me from those who would drink tea. Help me to not become a coffee snob, to appreciate a good brew and a good barista. Actually, I think I could pray that on some occasions because I'm very fond of coffee, but not tea. So I just want to thank you very much for having me here and for having this opportunity to talk to you. This is my email. I am Woodeene on Facebook and Instagram. Here's my website. The book is available at Ave Press, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, local Catholic bookstores. Feel free, if you would like, to send me a message or to reach out to me on Comcast, my email address, or if you want to reach out on Facebook and Instagram. If you have some particular questions about how I might be able to help you, I will do my very best. I don't always have the answers, but I often know where to find the answers. So feel free to reach out to me. And I am terrible at promoting my own books. I really am just horrible at promoting my own books. Obviously, Praying with the Saints from Ave, which is wonderful, and they've just done a spectacular job, and I couldn't be happier with Ave. I have a book, 365 Saints, as I mentioned before, which is a saint a day. There's also 365 Mary, which is 365 entries about Mary. One book called Dinner Party with the Saints, which is a particular favorite of mine, contains a fictional story of 16 saints who are coming to a dinner party in heaven and waiting for the arrival of the guest of honor. And each chapter, the saint tells some part of its story. There's biographical material. There's a lot of historical context. And then I partnered with a cordon bleu chef to create recipes that are doable in a person's home. A family could do them that would either use the ingredients or use one of the dishes, the foods that the saint had named. And finally, there is a book out that I wrote called Is It a Saint's Name? I think it's only available on the used market, but it does give you much information on all the saints and all their names. So again, I just really thank you for letting me be here, for letting me be a part of you. And if you have questions, I would be very happy to try to answer.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Woodeene. I've already gotten comments that they love your fictitious saint.
Oh, I like Saint Caffeina Barista too.
Well, and I think it just helps us to see that the saints are real people, right? And those are the things to really touch upon, things that will engage our parishioners. I wonder too if your dinner party with the saints, there might be some good things that could be incorporated into celebrating that in your parish or your small group.
Absolutely, because there's a storyline that runs all the way through it, a fictional story, which also brings in details about the saints. But then there's a lot of factual information about the saint, and the context of the time that they lived in, so you can really kind of ground them when they lived and what they were doing. A lot of the myths about the saint. It also contains each saint has a whole section about what are the things that are mythological about the saints. But for instance, John the Baptist, lots of talk about what was happening at the time of the Roman Empire, what was happening about there, where he was, the palace, Herod's palace, where he was executed, what it was like, what it looked like, what is now being an Egyptologist and an archaeologist at heart, we've got archaeological things in there. And then he serves, I forget what it was that my cordon bleu chef made, because I wanted her to do roasted locusts. And she said, no.
No.
Roasted locusts. So I didn't cook any of these recipes. I mean, I didn't invent any recipes myself, but so I had the roasted locusts, and I can tell you, I did them and I tasted them, and they taste a little bit like sunflower seeds or pumpkin seeds or something, but their little feet and antennas get stuck in your teeth, and they're really not pleasant to eat at all. So I think if I'd ever really do them, I'd pull those things all off before I did them again. But anyway, that's just for fun. But there are a lot of recipes in there, and they're all, one of the things that we want to do is make them very doable. And so you could have some kind of a parish celebration where something very simple, one of the simple recipes, could actually be presented to your parish, or small groups could be parish to it. So it was one of my favorite books, and it was just so fun to partner with this woman who is just this incredibly amazing chef, and to see the kind of things that she could do.
That's awesome. That's wonderful. So getting some comments here, a couple how they love your made up saint name. And then one gentleman said, we have a chapel with a portable altar, and thus we do not have a relic.
He would be correct.
Yeah.
Because the relic is put into the main altar when the church is dedicated. So if you have a portable altar, you're not going to have a saint in it for a variety of reasons. One of is you don't want, because it's a portable altar, you don't want it to be stolen and desecrated. And when you have it as a main altar and it's underneath a big heavy rock and it's buried inside, a reliquary, it's not going to be stolen. It can't really be vandalized that easily. They'd have to destroy the whole altar to get to it. But if you have a portable altar, somebody could steal the altar. So yes, You will
Okay.
not have a relic inside a portable altar.
Yeah. Okay, great. Thanks for giving us the reasoning behind that. I have another question here. What would you recommend for a 200th anniversary of a parish with a saint name?
Well, first of all, what's the saint's name? I mean, that,
Yeah.
if the person can tell you what the saint's name is, I could be a little more
Okay.
specific.
Yeah,
Um,
maybe she will.
maybe
Yeah.
she will come up with that. If not, we'll cycle back to that one and I'll give you some
Okay.
more general ideas if there's
Okay.
another question.
Okay. Oh, it's Saint Columban. Columban?
Yes, okay. Irish saint. Um, I'd look at, if it were me, first of all, I would start and look at the history of the saint. Look at what you know about the saint. Look at what you know about the saint realistically and historically, and also look at what you know about the saint in terms of myths and things that have arisen about it. I believe there are a couple of movies out about St. Columban. I don't know how good they are because I've not actually watched them, but I do know that there are a couple of movies out. So that would be one of the things that you could, feature a movie about your saint. Also, contextualize your saint. Why was the saint chosen? 200 years ago, was there a large Irish population? Why was the saint chosen? That would be a really important aspect for your celebration, is to say, why was this saint chosen 200 years ago? And what was the reasoning behind choosing that saint? How is that relevant for us today? How would, if we were choosing St. Columba today to name this parish, what would we focus on? What would we choose? Now, I am not wildly familiar with him other than he was a saint, and a friend of mine who is a fiction author in Scotland does refer to him quite frequently in his books in his fictional books. So I kind of have a little bit of Scottish aside knowledge of him, but look at him in the context of, first of all, his time. Second of all, the time that the parish was established as to why that name was there. And then find something about that saint, about what they did, that is very relevant for today. Every saint has something that will be relevant today. I guarantee you. It might not be the first thing that comes to mind, but there will be something about that saint that will be very relevant to your parish today. Maybe it is welcoming the stranger because he came in as a missionary. Maybe it's creating, if I remember correctly, and I'd have to look it up, but I believe that he was a great catechist. So presenting the faith, how can you present the faith in a easy and non-threatening way to people who don't share the Catholic faith? Maybe you can center your the people who are entering the church around some of his what he teaches. Certainly find his prayers. Find there is a prayer of St. Columba, I know that. So find his prayer, begin to introduce it to your parish, begin to use it before the parish celebration comes up so that people are really familiar with it. What you want to do is you want to familiarize people with who he was so that he becomes relevant for today. So when you celebrate him, you're not just celebrating the 200-year anniversary establishment of a building, but you really are celebrating that person. Does that
Mhm.
help?
I think it does. Thank you very much, they said in the comments and the questions. So yeah. So, I'm thinking about, if I were a parish leader, how can I get my community to come to these parish events celebrating our patron saint, right? When we know people are so busy and maybe in some parishes engagement is down at this point. So would you recommend like start slow,
Oh,
gradually?
absolutely. That's why I suggested in the easy entree here
Right.
is to maybe just put a little line in the bulletin about who the saint is, just to kind of to remind people that it was named after a saint. Put a holy card at the back of the church that people could pick up. So that it has, people love to take things home. People love things for free. They always
For
do.
free, yeah, yeah.
So I mean, they love it. It's just human nature. So you have a card, with the saint on it, a tiny bit of biographical material, maybe one of their prayers. What you want to do is you want to make the mind shift from this being a building and an institution to being a person.
Hmm.
And in order to do that, you just need to start very slow, begin to bring in some elements that separate out this is the institutionalized building and refocus it on who the person was. And as you begin to do that, and as people get more interested in who the saint was, they will naturally, I think, want to become more engaged. It's probably a process. It's not something you can just leap into and jump into. It's probably a process, but it's a gradual process by which you begin to introduce things. I have a friend who belongs to a parish who's begun to introduce these things. Started out with a holy cards in the back of the church, then moved up to having a bulletin insert, moved up to having somebody talk a little bit about the saint. It's been over the course of about 9 months that this parish has really begun to draw people into who the saint was and begin to get them to be really more interested in who their parish saint is. And now they're beginning to make plans for a bigger kind of a celebration.
Yep, yep. That sounds great. All right. Well, Woodeene, we are so pleased that you have joined us today and shared your love of the saints with us and given us some real practical, real doable things that we can implement in our parishes. I'm gonna do a little research. I'm gonna ask my pastor, why is my parish called Queen of Peace? And what is the relic, right? Yeah.
What is the relic and why
Right.
is your parish called that?
Yeah.
There has to be a reason. And even to start there with parishioners, why is the parish named Queen of Peace?
Mm-hmm.
That question will begin to engage people. It
Mm-hmm.
simply will, because they'll say, well, I
Mm-hmm.
never thought about that. I wonder why it's called Queen of Peace.
Right.
Then you begin,
Right.
you
Absolutely.
begin to draw them into that from that very, very simple beginning.
Yep. Yep. I love it. All right. Well, as always, we offer a little discount for here your book, Praying with the Saints. What would you like to tell those on with us? What would you like to tell them more about this book?
This book is very near to my heart because I wanted it to be very representative of the universal church. So we have saints from the beginning of the history of the church all up to the most recently canonized saints this last fall. So we've covered the gamut. I have made sure that there are saints included from every continent except Antarctica, because we don't have a saint from Antarctica yet. But there are saints from every other continent. There are saints from every ethnic group that I can find. There are saints from every walk of life that is possible. So we have saints who are, priests and nuns and bishops. We have saints who have mothers and fathers. We have saints who are single people. We have saints who've dealt with complicated and difficult issues, who've dealt with family matters, who've dealt with a whole wide range of issues in their lives so that they can be very relatable. The second thing is, because I'm a journalist at heart, I wanted to make sure that the prayers in this book are the actual words of the saints.
Oh,
So the prayer of St. Francis that everyone is familiar with is not included because Francis did not write
right,
that. It was written by an Anglican pastor at some point and included in a French magazine. So the words that you read in this book will be the words of the saint as closely as we can get them, as close as I could find them. In many instances, I had friends of mine who were scholars in Latin and Greek translate from a Latin and Greek early work, so that we went back as close as we could, as close as I could, to the primary sources. So when you read them, you can have an assurance that you really are hearing what the words of the saints are, not what somebody thought they should have said. So wide range, universality, and actual words.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. And you all can get this using code webinar1202 for today's date when ordering at avemariapress.com. And I invite all of you to join us, not next week, but the following week, December 16th. Mark Hart from Life Teen, also known as the Bible Geek, will be presenting a webinar for us, and I'll send all of you an email invite for that. Thank you again, Woodeene.
Thank you
Thank you
for
to
inviting.
Absolutely. Thank you to everybody who has joined us today or watching this later. Please share about our webinar series, and we wish you a blessed Advent. So thank you all so much. Take care. Have a great day. Bye-bye.